How do you stay calm when your own daughter treats you like a bank, then says her in-laws matter more than you? Why would she steal $180,000 for a luxury trip, then act like I was the problem for not smiling about it? Can a father still love his child while legally removing her from his life? In one quiet final move? My name is Graham Voss. I am 61 years old, and I spent 30 years raising my daughter alone after my wife passed when Elara was 4. I worked as a systems auditor for most of my career, the kind of job where you learn to check facts twice, follow patterns, and trust documentation over emotion. I retired 3 years ago with enough savings to live comfortably, though I still work part-time as a school maintenance supervisor because I like fixing things and staying useful. I live simply. I drive a 12-year-old sedan. I drink tea at night instead of expensive wine. I check my bank statements every week because that is what careful people do. I tell you this so you understand I am not dramatic. I do not yell. I do not make scenes. When something feels wrong, I check the systems first and ask questions second. That habit saved my professional life more than once. Now it was about to save my personal one. The first sign came on a Tuesday night in late September. I was sitting at my kitchen table with chamomile tea and my laptop reviewing the usual monthly charges. Electric bill, property tax, groceries. The rhythm was predictable, almost meditative. Then I saw something that made me stop mid-sip. A pending charge for $9,400 at a merchant I did not recognize. The description was generic: travel services, authorization pending. I stared at it for a full minute. My hand did not shake. I simply set the mug down and opened a new browser tab to check if my card had been compromised. But the charge was not flagged as fraud. It was listed as authorized. I leaned back in my chair and listened to the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the next room. The house felt too empty suddenly, like it was holding its breath. I closed the laptop. I would call the bank in the morning. No need to panic over what might be a glitch. That is what careful people do. They verify before they react. The next day at work, I was in the maintenance hallway replacing a broken door closer when 2 younger staff members walked past, talking about vacation plans. One of them was booking a resort in Cancun. The other laughed and said, "God, I wish I could afford that. Maybe next year when I get my raise." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. They did not see me crouched by the doorframe with my toolbox. I have become good at being invisible. It does not bother me most days. I finished tightening the screws, tested the hydraulic resistance 3 times to make sure it would not slam, and moved on to the next repair order. The hallway smelled like floor polish and old paint. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I liked this work. It was honest. You fixed something or you did not. There was no ambiguity. That evening, Elara called. My daughter, 34 years old, married for 6 years to a man named Nolan Cade. She sounded cheerful in that performative way she had developed over the past few years, bright and insistent, like she was reading from a script someone else had written. "Dad, hi, how are you?" Her voice was too loud, too enthusiastic. "I am fine, sweetheart. How are you?" "Great. Listen, we are planning a family dinner on Saturday. Nothing fancy, just a chance to celebrate togetherness. Can you come?" Togetherness. She used that word like it meant something. I said I would be happy to come. She told me to dress nicely because they were going somewhere with a patio. I asked if I should bring anything. No, just bring yourself. That is all we need." She paused. "It will be nice. You will see." I hung up, feeling uneasy, but could not name why. The conversation had been perfectly pleasant on the surface, but there was something underneath it, a current I could not quite identify. Saturday arrived clear and warm, one of those October days where summer refuses to let go completely. I put on a clean button-down shirt and khakis and drove to the restaurant Elara had texted me. It was one of those upscale places with white tablecloths and waiters who refilled water glasses before you noticed they were empty. Soft jazz played through invisible speakers. Everything gleamed. I spotted Elara at a corner table on the patio. She was not alone. Nolan sat beside her, and across from them were his parents, Maris and Orrin Cade. Maris was 62, slim and sharp-eyed, always dressed like she was about to attend a gallery opening. Today she wore cream linen and gold jewelry that caught the afternoon light. Orrin was 65, silver-haired, and confident in the way men are when they have never been told no. His watch probably cost more than my car. They smiled at me as I approached, but the smiles did not reach their eyes. Maris waved with just her fingertips. Elara stood and kissed my cheek. She smelled like expensive perfume, something French and complicated. She gestured to the empty chair at the end of the table, the one farthest from the centerpiece and closest to the patio railing. "Sit here, Dad. You will love the view." I sat. The view was of a parking lot and a hedge. The conversation began before I even ordered. Maris was already mid-story about a couple they knew. Dear friends, absolutely lovely people, who had just returned from a river cruise in Europe. She described the itinerary in detail, lingering on the wine tastings and private tours. Orrin leaned back in his chair and said, "That is what life is about, really. Experiences, seeing the world while you still can. Too many people wait until it is too late." He looked at me when he said it. Elara nodded enthusiastically, her hand resting on Nolan's. "Exactly. That is what I have been learning. It is not about things, it is about moments, about building memories with people who matter." Nolan said little. He usually did. He was 36 and worked in sales, though I had never been entirely clear on what he sold. He had the kind of face that disappeared in a crowd, pleasant, unremarkable, easy to forget. His parents had presence. He had borrowed theirs. I tried to join in. I mentioned a documentary I had watched about Iceland, something about volcanic landscapes and geothermal energy. I thought it was interesting. Orrin spoke over me before I finished the second sentence. "Iceland is beautiful, sure, but if you really want to understand European culture, you need to go to Italy. We stayed at this villa in Tuscany a few years back, 16th century, completely restored. The owner was a count. Can you imagine? Breakfast on a terrace overlooking olive groves." Maris added, "Travel is really about connection, you know, about building memories with people who understand what matters." Elara agreed enthusiastically. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten. "Maris and Orrin have shown me what real family means. They have taught me that love is not just about presence, but about shared values and effort, about really investing in each other." She looked at Maris and Orrin when she said it, not at me. Her eyes were shining. Maris reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You are such a gift, Elara. We are so lucky to have you in our lives." I sat there, with my water glass half raised, and said nothing. My throat felt tight. The meal continued. I ordered the cheapest entree on the menu, grilled chicken with vegetables. Maris made a comment as the waiter walked away. "You are always so careful with money, Graham. That is admirable, I suppose, in its own way." Orrin laughed. It was not a mean laugh exactly, but it had an edge. "Some people are savers, some are livers. Different philosophies." Elara did not correct them. Nolan studied his plate like it held the answers to questions he was too afraid to ask. The food came. I ate slowly. They talked about upcoming plans, vague references to exciting changes and new chapters. Maris mentioned something about finally getting to do what we have always dreamed about. Orrin said, "When you have people who really care about you, anything is possible." I chewed my chicken and let the words wash over me. When dessert came, I declined. They ordered 3. Maris raised her glass and proposed a toast. "To family," she said, her voice warm and theatrical. "To the people who understand what really matters. To those who show up and show love in real, meaningful ways." She looked directly at Elara and Nolan. Then she glanced at Oren. She did not look at me. No one else did either. They clinked glasses. I sat there with my empty water glass and felt like furniture. After the toast, I excused myself early, citing a headache. It was not entirely a lie. My skull felt tight, like pressure was building behind my eyes. Elara walked me to the parking lot. The sun was starting to set, painting everything gold and orange. She asked if I was feeling all right. "I am fine," I said. "You seem quiet." "Just tired." She hugged me. It was the kind of hug you give someone out of obligation, not affection. Her arms were loose, her body angled away. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too." Her tone was warm but distant, like she was reading a line she no longer believed. I got into my car and sat there for a moment before starting the engine. My hands rested on the steering wheel. I stared at the dashboard. The parking lot was emptying. Couples walked to their cars, laughing and talking. Families loaded children into back seats. Life continued like nothing was wrong. My phone buzzed. A notification from my bank app. I opened it. Another pending charge. This one was for $14,600. Luxury travel booking. Authorization confirmed. My hands went cold. I read it 3 times to make sure I was seeing it correctly. The merchant was a travel concierge service. The amount was enough to make my chest tighten. I sat there in the fading light and felt something shift inside me. Not panic, not even anger yet, just a slow, creeping certainty that I had been a fool. I started the car and drove home in silence. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my home office with the desk lamp on and my laptop open, scrolling through my account history line by line. The transactions were there, spread out over weeks like breadcrumbs. Multiple charges in the travel and hospitality category. Some small, 500 here, 800 there, others large enough to make my pulse quicken. Hotel deposits, airfare, something listed as concierge premium services, another labeled luxury experience package. I did not add up the total yet. I was not ready to see that number. Instead, I just stared at the screen and let the pattern sink in. This was not random. This was systematic. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. The room smelled like old wood and dust. This office used to be Elara's playroom when she was small. I could still picture her on the floor with crayons and construction paper, building imaginary worlds where everything made sense and problems solved themselves with glitter glue. Her mother, my wife, Diane, had been gone for 30 years. Pancreatic diagnosis in the spring, gone by winter. 6 months from first symptom to funeral. Elara was 4. I was 31 and terrified. I had no idea how to raise a daughter alone. I learned by doing. I packed her lunches every morning. I braided her hair even though I was terrible at it, and she would come home with lopsided pigtails and tangles. I attended every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game where she sat on the bench and picked grass instead of paying attention to the ball. I turned down promotions because they required travel. I stayed local, stayed present. I built a savings account slowly and carefully because I wanted her to have security. I wanted her to go to college without loans. I wanted her to start adulthood without the weight I had carried when Diane got sick and the hospital bills came. She went to a state school and graduated with a degree in communications. She moved back home for 2 years while she found her footing in the job market. I did not charge her rent. I paid for her car insurance, her phone bill, her groceries. When she finally got her first apartment, I helped with the deposit and the first month's rent. She thanked me every time, but somewhere in those thank yous, the gratitude turned into expectation. I remembered the moment I first noticed it. She was 26. She had been working for 3 years and wanted a newer car. Something more professional, she said. She asked me to co-sign a loan for a car she wanted, but could not quite afford on her own. I hesitated, not because I did not want to help, but because the numbers did not make sense for her salary. She accused me of not believing in her. She said I was holding her back, that I did not understand what it meant to build a career and an image. She cried. I signed. She met Nolan a year later at a work conference. He was polite and soft-spoken, the kind of man who never raised his voice because he never needed to. He agreed with everyone. His parents were different. Maris and Oren arrived in Elara's life like weather, sudden, unavoidable, reshaping everything in their path. They had money, not just comfortable money, but real money, the kind that came with vacation homes and investment portfolios and opinions about wine regions. They hosted dinners at country clubs. They paid for weekend trips. They treated Elara like a project they could improve, and she let them. I watched her change over the next few years. She started using phrases I had never heard her use before: building equity, strategic networking, curating experiences. She talked about image and positioning. She began measuring people by what they could offer. She stopped calling me just to talk. When she did call, it was because she needed something: a reference for a job application, a favor with a contractor, a check to cover an unexpected expense. I told myself it was normal. She was building her own life. I was supposed to step back and let her be an adult. That is what good parents do. But stepping back felt like disappearing, and the more I stepped back, the more invisible I became. I closed my laptop and rubbed my eyes. It was almost 3 a.m. The house was silent except for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock down the hall. I needed to see this clearly before I acted. I needed to confirm what I already suspected. The next afternoon, Sunday, I drove to Elara's townhouse. It was in a new development with identical units and landscaping that looked expensive to maintain. Everything was beige and clean and utterly forgettable. I parked on the street and walked up the front path. I knocked. Elara answered after a long pause, her face tight with surprise. "Dad, I was not expecting you." "I should have called. Can I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Yeah, sure." I walked into the living room and looked around. The furniture was new, sleek leather and glass, the kind you see in showrooms. There were shopping bags near the sofa, designer labels I recognized from advertisements. A set of new luggage sat by the hallway, tags still attached. On the coffee table were glossy travel brochures spread out like a fan. One showed a Mediterranean coastline with white buildings cascading down cliffs. Another advertised private yacht excursions and helicopter tours. I picked up one of the brochures. "Planning a trip?" "That is nothing, just browsing." Her tone was clipped, defensive. "These look expensive." "It is just research, Dad. We are not booking anything." I set the brochure down carefully. "How are things financially? Everything okay?" She stiffened, her arms crossed over her chest. "That is kind of a personal question, do not you think? I am your father. And I am an adult. I do not need to justify my spending to you." I kept my voice calm. "I am not asking you to justify anything. I am just checking in. I noticed some unusual charges on my account and wanted to make sure my card had not been compromised." Something flickered in her expression. Not guilt. Calculation. Like she was deciding how much to admit. "I have no idea what you are talking about," she said finally. "If you are having trouble managing your finances, maybe you should talk to someone professional, a financial advisor or something." She made it sound like I was confused, like I was old and losing track of things. I tried a different approach. "Elara, if you needed money, you could have asked me directly. We could have talked about it. I did not take anything from you." Her voice was rising now. "And honestly, it is a little insulting that you would come here and accuse me like this." "I am not accusing. I am asking." "No, you are implying. There is a difference." She walked to the door and opened it. "I think you should go." I stood there for a moment, looking at her. My daughter. The little girl I had raised alone, who used to fall asleep on my chest while I read her stories. Now she was looking at me like I was a stranger, worse, like I was an inconvenience. "I am going to review my accounts carefully before offering any more help," I said quietly. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, thin and cold. "That is probably smart. You should be careful about who you trust." The irony was not lost on me. I left without another word. I drove home slowly, taking back roads instead of the highway. I needed time to think. The trees were starting to turn, gold and red against the gray sky. Fall was settling in. That evening, I sat in my kitchen and made a list by hand. I think better with a pen. Dates, amounts, merchants, transaction descriptions. I wrote everything down in neat columns, the way I used to document audit findings at work. When I finished, I folded the paper and put it in a drawer under a stack of old utility bills. My phone buzzed. A notification from the family group chat, the one Elara had started 2 years ago to keep everyone connected. There were 12 people in it. Me, Elara, Nolan, his parents, his sister, a few cousins I barely knew. I rarely posted anything. I mostly just read what everyone else wrote and tried to keep track of birthdays. The new message was from Elara. She had written, "Big announcement coming soon. Stay tuned for exciting family news." The reactions came immediately. Heart emojis, exclamation points. Someone asked, "Are you pregnant?" Someone else guessed, "New house?" Maris replied, "So proud of this beautiful family. You all deserve the world." I stared at the screen. Then I opened my laptop and created a new folder on my desktop. I labeled it Timeline. I did not save anything inside it yet. I just wanted it ready. I had a feeling I was going to need it. Monday morning, I walked into my bank branch at 9 o'clock sharp. The lobby was bright and clean, all glass and polished tile. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. A young woman at the front desk greeted me with a professional smile and asked how she could help. "I need to review some transactions in person," I said. "There are charges I do not recognize." She directed me to a desk near the window and said someone would be with me shortly. I sat in a leather chair and waited. Soft music played overhead, something instrumental and forgettable. Other customers moved through the space quietly, conducting their business with efficiency. The banker who met with me was in his 30s, wearing a navy tie that looked expensive. He introduced himself as Marcus and shook my hand with the firm grip of someone who had been trained in customer service. "What brings you in today, Mr. Voss?" I explained calmly that I had noticed several large charges over the past few weeks that I did not recognize and wanted to understand where they came from. I kept my voice steady and factual. I did not use words like theft or fraud. Not yet. He pulled up my account on his screen and scrolled through the recent activity. His face remained neutral, professional. "I see what you are referring to. These are substantial transactions." "Yes." "Have you shared your card information with anyone recently?" "No, not intentionally." "Have you authorized anyone to use your accounts? Family members, perhaps?" I paused. "Not for purchases like these." He tilted his head slightly, studying the screen. "The charges were processed as authorized transactions, not as fraud. The system recognized them as legitimate. How is that possible if I did not approve them?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "There are multiple ways a transaction can be authorized without explicit real-time approval. Linked accounts, authorized user status, saved payment methods in online wallets, tokenized credentials. Sometimes people forget they gave permission years ago and those permissions remain active." I did not forget. He glanced at me, then back at the screen. "I understand. However, from a technical standpoint, these transactions show up in our system as properly authorized. That makes them difficult to dispute. But I am telling you I did not authorize them. I hear you, Mr. Voss, and I can certainly open a dispute on your behalf. But I need to be honest with you. It could take weeks to investigate, and there is no guarantee of resolution if the charges were processed through legitimate access channels. I felt a slow burn in my chest. So what you are saying is that someone can use my money, and as long as they do it through the right technical loophole, there is nothing I can do? That is not exactly what I am saying, but disputes involving family members or people with historical account access are complicated. The bank has to follow specific protocols. I took a breath and let it out slowly. Getting angry would not help. Can you print me a detailed summary of these transactions? Dates, amounts, merchants, authorization methods? Of course. He clicked a few keys. It will take just a moment. While the printer hummed, he asked, "Do you want to proceed with filing a formal dispute?" "Not yet. I need to gather more information first." He nodded. "That is probably wise. Make sure you understand exactly what happened before you take action." The printer finished. He handed me 3 pages, still warm. I folded them carefully and put them in my jacket pocket. "Thank you for your help. Of course, if you need anything else, just let us know." As I left the building, I walked past an ATM vestibule near the entrance. The machines stood in a row, humming quietly like patient sentinels. I glanced up. There was a camera dome in the corner, small, black, unobtrusive. I thought about how much those cameras saw, how much they remembered. Systems always remember. I drove home and sat at my kitchen table with the printed summary spread out in front of me. I studied the dates. The charges began in mid-August, innocuous at first. A $500 charge labeled travel planning services, an $800 deposit at a resort property. Then they escalated through September. Larger amounts, more frequent. By the end of the month, there were charges over $10,000. The dates coincided with conversations I remembered. Elara mentioning plans, Maris talking about experiences, Oren mocking my caution about spending. I opened my laptop and created a simple spreadsheet in the timeline folder. I entered every charge, organized by date. I added a column for merchant names and another for amounts. As I typed, the pattern became undeniable. This was not accidental. This was planned. That afternoon, I had to work a shift at the school. I drove across town with my mind half somewhere else. When I arrived, the maintenance supervisor handed me a work order, a broken door in the east hallway that was not closing properly. I grabbed my toolbox and headed over. The hallway was empty. School had let out an hour ago. My footsteps echoed on the linoleum. I knelt by the door and examined the closer mechanism. The hydraulic arm was leaking fluid. An easy fix, but it would take time. I unscrewed the mounting bracket and carefully removed the old unit. As I worked, I thought about systems. How they function when properly maintained. How they fail when neglected. How small leaks become big problems if you ignore them long enough. I installed the new door closer and tested it 3 times. It worked perfectly. Smooth resistance, no slamming. I packed up my tools and moved to the next item on the list. By the time I got home, it was almost 6. I made a simple dinner, pasta with olive oil and garlic, and ate it at the kitchen table while reviewing the printed bank summary again. The numbers felt surreal. All that money gone, spent on luxury for people who thought I was irrelevant. My phone rang. Elara. I almost did not answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hi, sweetheart." "Dad." Her voice was strange, tight and cautious. "We need to talk." "Okay." "About yesterday. I feel like things got tense and I want to clear the air." "I am listening." She sighed. "Look, I know you have questions about money, and I understand that. But I am an adult with my own life and my own decisions to make. I do not think it is fair for you to come to my house and interrogate me." I was not interrogating. I was asking. It felt like interrogating, and honestly, it made me uncomfortable. I stayed quiet, letting her fill the silence. I need you to understand that my relationship with Nolan's family is important to me. They have been incredibly supportive. They have shown me things about life that I never understood before. What things? How to live fully. How to invest in experiences. How to be part of something bigger than just survival. That word stung. Survival. Like everything I had done was just scraping by instead of building a foundation. Elara, did you use my accounts without asking? There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing. If I had access to something you gave me in the past, that is not the same as stealing. I never gave you permission to spend tens of thousands of dollars on trips for your in-laws. You do not understand what they have done for us. For me, they are family, Dad. Real family. My grip tightened on the phone. What does that make me? Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was harder. You have been a good father. I am not saying you have not. But Maris and Oren, they understand me in ways you never could. They support me without conditions, without judgment, without making me feel like I owe them something. I never made you feel like you owe me anything. That is not true. Every time you help me, there is this weight to it, like you are keeping score, like I am supposed to be grateful forever. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear and felt something crack inside me. Not anger, something colder. Elara, I am going to ask you one more time. Did you take money from my accounts? I used resources that were available to me. That is not taking. It is if I did not agree to it. We can agree to disagree. Her voice was sharp now, defensive. And honestly, Dad, I do not appreciate being treated like a criminal. If you want to be part of my life, you need to respect my choices. Even when your choices involve stealing from me. I did not steal anything, she was yelling now. God, you are so stuck in this narrow little worldview where everything is about rules and systems and documentation. Some of us want more than that. Some of us want to actually live. I closed my eyes. I hope you have a good evening, Elara. Dad, I ended the call. I sat there in my kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing. The sun set outside the window. Shadows stretched across the floor. When it was fully dark, I stood up and walked to my office. I opened the timeline folder on my laptop and started typing. I wrote down everything she had said, the justifications, the deflections, the moment she called her in-laws her real family. I did not cry. I did not throw anything. I just documented, because systems always remember, and I was building one she would not forget. Thursday morning, I arrived at Tessa Rhine's office 15 minutes early. The building was a converted Victorian house on a quiet street lined with oak trees. The kind of place that felt more like someone's home than a law office, which I supposed was the point. A brass plaque beside the door read, Rhine and Associates, Estate Planning and Elder Law. A young woman with a kind face let me in and offered coffee. I declined. She led me to a conference room with dark wood furniture and framed certificates on the walls. Tessa appeared a moment later, carrying a yellow legal pad and reading glasses. She was 58, with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. We had met years ago at a seminar on retirement planning. I had kept her business card in my wallet ever since, thinking I might need it someday. That day had arrived. Graham? She shook my hand firmly. It is good to see you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Please, sit. I sat across from her. The room smelled like old books and lemon polish. There was a window behind her that looked out onto a small garden. Tell me what is going on, she said. I told her everything. I kept my voice even and factual, the way I used to deliver audit reports. I explained the charges, the timeline, the conversations with Elara, the realization that my own daughter had decided I was less important than the people she wanted to impress. I explained what she had said about her in-laws being her real family. Tessa listened without interrupting. She took notes on her pad in neat, precise handwriting. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. How much total are we talking about? I have not added it all up yet. Conservatively, at least 150,000, maybe more. She did not blink. And you believe your daughter orchestrated this using access she had to your accounts? Yes. Do you have documentation? I pulled the folded papers from my pocket and spread them on the table. She put on her reading glasses and studied them carefully, running her finger down the columns of transactions. These are all flagged as authorized, she said. I know. That makes proving theft complicated. The bank will argue she had legitimate access. She did not have my permission to do this. I understand. But from a legal standpoint, permission and access are two different things. She looked up at me. Did you ever give her authorized user status on your cards or share account passwords? I hesitated. Years ago, when she was younger and living at home, I added her to one of my credit cards for emergencies. I thought I removed her when she moved out, but I might not have. Tessa nodded slowly. That is the problem. If she was technically authorized, even from years ago, a prosecutor would have a hard time making a fraud case stick, especially since she is family. So she can just take my money and there is nothing I can do? I did not say that. I said a criminal case would be difficult. But there are other ways to protect yourself. She picked up her pen again. What do you want to happen here, Graham? Do you want your money back? Do you want to press charges? Do you want to simply make sure this never happens again? I thought about it. I want to make sure she cannot do this again, and I want to make sure that when I am gone, my assets go where I choose, not where she decides. Your estate plan? Yes. When was the last time you updated your will? 12 years ago, right after I retired. And currently, Elara is your primary beneficiary? She is my only child. So yes. Tessa leaned back in her chair. We need to change that immediately. We spent the next hour discussing options. She explained the process carefully, making sure I understood each step. She asked if I wanted to leave Elara anything at all, a token amount, a specific item, something to acknowledge the relationship. No, I said. Nothing. You are certain? Completely. She made more notes. What about your grandson, Pax, correct? Yes, he is 12. Would you like to provide for him? I thought about Pax, about his quiet thoughtfulness, about the way he asked questions that made adults uncomfortable because they were too honest. Yes, I want to create a trust for his education, something Elara cannot touch or control. Tessa nodded. That is smart. We can structure it so the funds go directly to educational expenses, tuition, books, housing, with a trustee who is not Elara. When he turns 25, any remaining balance transfers to him directly. Can you be the trustee? I can, or we can appoint a professional trust company. Either way, Elara would have no access and no authority to change the terms. I want you to do it. She smiled slightly. All right. I will draw up the documents this week. We will need to meet again to sign and notarize everything. How soon can that happen? Friday afternoon. Does that work? Yes. She studied me for a moment. Graham, I need to ask, are you doing this out of anger, or is this truly what you want? I met her eyes. I am not angry. I am done. She nodded. That is a good answer. Anger fades. Clarity does not. Before I left, she handed me a business card with a name and number written on the back. This is Hector Vale. He works in fraud prevention and claims liaison at your bank. He is not a police officer, but he is very good at documenting financial patterns. Call him. Tell him I referred you. What should I ask him to do? Ask him to help you establish a clear record that you are revoking all previous authorizations and securing your accounts. Ask him to preserve any transaction logs, camera footage from ATMs, anything that might be useful later. Even if you do not pursue legal action, having documentation protects you. I took the card. Thank you. One more thing. She walked me to the door. Do not tell Elara what you are doing, not yet. If she knows you are making changes, she might try to escalate or create complications. Wait until everything is filed and finalized. I understand. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I had a plan now, systems in place. I was no longer just reacting. I was building something. That afternoon, I called Hector Vale. He answered on the second ring with a voice that was calm and professional. Hector Vale. Mr. Vale, my name is Graham Voss. Tessa Rhine gave me your number. Ah, yes. Tessa mentioned you might call. What can I do for you? I explained the situation in broad strokes. Unauthorized use of my accounts, large transactions, family complications. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, I can help you with that. We should meet in person. I will need to see your account history and walk you through the security audit process. Are you available Tuesday morning? Yes. Good. Come to the main branch at 10. Ask for me at the information desk. What should I bring? Just yourself and any documentation you have already gathered. I will pull the rest from our system. I thanked him and hung up. The weekend passed in a strange calm. I worked my shift at the school on Saturday, fixing a leaking sink in the staff bathroom and replacing burned-out bulbs in the gym. The work was meditative. I liked problems with clear solutions. Sunday afternoon, I received a message in the family group chat. Elara had posted a photo of a custom cake with elaborate gold frosting. The caption read, "Cannot wait to celebrate the people who really show up." The reactions came fast. Heart emojis, applause. Maris commented, "You are such a beautiful soul." I did not react. I just archived the chat notification and went back to organizing my files. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list of everything I needed to do. Change passwords, enable two-factor authentication, update mailing addresses, create security questions with answers only I would know. Call customer service lines and add verification requirements. It was tedious work, but tedious work is what protects you. I started immediately. I spent hours going through every account, bank, email, phone provider, utilities. I changed every password to something complex and unique. I set up authentication apps on my phone. I called my bank's customer service line and requested that any major account changes require in-person verification with photo ID. The representative asked why I was adding so many security measures. I told her I wanted to be careful. She said that was very responsible. I did not tell her it was because I no longer trusted my own daughter. Tuesday morning, I met Hector Vale at the bank. He was 47, with dark hair going gray at the temples, and the kind of steady presence that made you feel like problems could actually be solved. He wore a suit, but no tie, and he shook my hand with casual confidence. "Mr. Voss, good to meet you. Come with me." He led me to a small office in the back of the branch, away from the open floor. The room had a desk, 2 chairs, and a computer. No windows. It felt secure. He gestured for me to sit. Tessa filled me in on the basics. "Tell me what you need." I handed him the printed transaction summaries I had been carrying. "I need to understand how these charges were authorized and how to make sure it cannot happen again." He put on reading glasses and studied the papers. His expression remained neutral, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. "These are substantial amounts." "Yes." "Do you know who initiated them?" "My daughter, or someone acting on her behalf." He nodded slowly. Family situations are always the most complicated. He turned to his computer and started typing. "Let me pull up your full account history." For the next 20 minutes, he walked me through every transaction, explaining the authorization methods. Some charges had been processed through saved payment credentials in online booking systems. Others had gone through as authorized user transactions on cards I had forgotten existed. A few had been initiated through mobile wallet apps that had been linked to my primary account years ago. How did she get access to all of this? I asked. That is the question. He leaned back in his chair. It is possible you gave her permission years ago and never revoked it. It is also possible she had access to your passwords or security information. Without knowing exactly how each authorization was set up, it is hard to say definitively. Can you tell from the system? To some extent. But the bank's records only show that transactions were authorized, not the specific mechanism someone used to authorize them. That is why these situations are so difficult to prove as fraud. So what can I do? He pulled up a different screen. We can lock down your accounts completely. Revoke all previous authorizations. Remove all authorized users. Disable saved payment methods. Require manual approval for every transaction over a certain amount. Essentially, we rebuild your security from scratch. Do it. It will take a few days to process everything, and it might be inconvenient. You will need to re-establish access to any legitimate services you use. I do not care about convenience. I care about protection. He nodded. Understood. I will start the process today. He made notes on a pad. I also recommend documenting everything in case you need it later. Transaction histories, access logs, security changes. If there is ever a legal dispute, having a clear record will be crucial. Can you preserve camera footage from ATM transactions? He glanced up. You think she used an ATM? I do not know, but if she did, I want proof. ATM footage is typically stored for 90 days unless flagged for preservation. I can submit a request to flag any footage associated with your accounts for the past 6 months. It will stay in the system indefinitely. Please do that. He typed more notes. I will also generate a complete transaction report with timestamps, merchant information, and authorization methods. It will take a week or so, but I will have it ready when you need it. Thank you. He looked at me seriously. Mr. Voss, I have to ask, are you planning to pursue legal action? I do not know yet. That is fair, but if you do, you will want everything documented properly. Chain of custody, no gaps in the record. I will make sure it is airtight. We spent another hour going through the security changes. By the time I left, I felt like I had built a wall between myself and everyone who had taken advantage of me. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through neighborhoods where houses sat peacefully under fall trees. I thought about how easy it is to assume people will respect boundaries, how trust is a gift, not a right. That evening, Elara texted me, "Hey Dad, just checking in. How are you?" I stared at the message. It was so casual, so normal, like nothing had happened, like she had not just stolen more than $100,000 and told me her in-laws were more important. I replied, "I am fine." She wrote back, "Good. Love you." I did not respond. Over the next few days, I noticed small changes. Elara texted more frequently, always with the same casual tone. She sent me a link to an article she thought I would like. She asked if I wanted to have lunch sometime. It felt like she was testing me, trying to see if I was still accessible. I kept my responses short and non-committal. On Friday afternoon, I returned to Tessa's office. She had the documents ready, thick folders with tabs and highlighted sections. We went through each one methodically: the new will, the trust for Pax, the power of attorney updates, the revocation of previous authorizations. She explained every clause, every condition. Once you sign these, your estate bypasses Elara completely. Everything goes into the trust for your grandson, administered by me until he turns 25. Elara cannot contest it, cannot override it, cannot access it. Do you understand? Yes. And you are certain this is what you want? Completely certain. I signed each document, Tessa witnessed. Her secretary notarized. The papers went into a file that would be stored in her office safe and registered with the county. "It is done," she said. "As of this moment, your estate is protected." I felt something release in my chest. Relief. Finality. "There is one more thing I need," I said. "What is that?" "I might need you to make an appearance. In public. Soon." She tilted her head. "What kind of appearance?" "A family gathering. To make sure everyone understands that I am of sound mind and that these changes are legitimate." She studied me for a moment. "You are planning something." "I am ending something." She nodded slowly. "When is this gathering?" "November 10th, Sunday morning, 11 o'clock. "I will be there." I left her office feeling like I had just closed a door I would never need to open again. That weekend, I received the invitation through the family group chat. Elara had posted, "You are all invited to a special welcome home brunch on Sunday, November 10th, at the Grandview Hotel Ballroom. Let us celebrate family together. Dress nicely. Photographer will be there." The reactions were enthusiastic. People confirmed immediately. Someone asked if there would be champagne. Elara replied, "Of course, only the best." I stared at the invitation. I pictured the room, everyone gathered in their nice clothes, phones out, smiles ready. The photographer adjusting lights, Maris and Oren holding court, basking in the attention. Elara playing the perfect daughter-in-law, the perfect family organizer, all of them in one room at one time. I replied, "I will be there." Elara sent me a private message immediately. "Really? You will come?" "Yes." "That means a lot, Dad. Thank you." I did not respond. I spent the next week in a state of quiet preparation. I printed final copies of documents. I organized files into labeled folders. I made backup copies on a USB drive and stored it in my safe deposit box. I updated emergency contacts. I reviewed everything 3 times to make sure there were no gaps. I called Hector Vale to confirm the documentation was ready. He said it was. Transaction reports, security logs, preserved footage, everything time-stamped and indexed. "Do you need me to be somewhere?" he asked. "No, just have everything ready in case I need it." "It will be waiting." The night before the brunch, I sat in my kitchen and felt an unusual calm settle over me. I had spent 30 years trying to keep peace, trying to be the kind father who never made demands, the soft presence who could be counted on and ignored in equal measure. That version of me was gone. I went to bed early and slept soundly. Sunday morning, I woke at 6. I made coffee and toast. I showered and dressed in my best shirt and dress pants. I polished my shoes. I combed my hair. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw an old man who had finally stopped apologizing for wanting respect. I put the USB drive in my pocket. I put Tessa's business card in my wallet. I got in my car and drove to the Grandview Hotel. It was time to stop being invisible. The Grandview Hotel sat on a hill overlooking the city, all glass and steel and expensive landscaping. Valet attendants in maroon vests directed cars into the circular drive. I parked in the guest lot instead and walked to the entrance. The air was cold and crisp. November had arrived with frost on windshields and breath visible in the morning light. Inside, the lobby was warm and echoing with marble floors and chandeliers. A sign near the elevators directed guests to the Cascade Ballroom on the 2nd floor. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, needing the extra minute to steady myself. The ballroom foyer was already filling with people. I recognized most of them from the family group chat. Nolan's sister, various cousins, a few friends I had met briefly at Elara's wedding. They stood in clusters, talking and laughing, dressed in their Sunday best. A photographer moved among them with a camera, capturing candid moments. Through the open double doors, I could see the ballroom itself. Round tables with white linens, tall centerpieces with orchids and greenery, A buffet set up along one wall with servers in crisp uniforms. At the far end, a small stage with a microphone stand. Everything gleamed under soft lighting. Elara spotted me first. She was near the entrance in a cream dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary, her hair styled in perfect waves. She smiled, bright and performative, and walked over quickly. "Dad, you came!" She hugged me. It was the same loose, obligatory hug she had given me in the restaurant parking lot. I said I would. "I know, but I was not sure if you—" She trailed off, searching my face. "Are you okay? You seem different." "I am fine." Nolan appeared beside her, looking uncomfortable in a suit that fit too well. "Graham, good to see you." "Nolan." We stood there in awkward silence until Maris's voice cut through the chatter. "Graham, you made it!" She swept toward us in a flowing emerald gown, Oren right behind her in a tailored navy suit. They looked like they had just stepped out of a magazine spread. "We are so glad you could join us for this special day." "Would not miss it," I said. Oren clapped me on the shoulder with false warmth. "Good man. Family is everything, right?" I did not answer. Elara ushered everyone toward their tables. "Let us get settled before the food gets cold. Dad, you are at table 3, near the back." Of course I was. Near the back, away from the center, out of the photographs. I found my seat, a small table in the corner, partially obscured by a decorative pillar. There were 2 other people there, neither of whom I knew. They introduced themselves politely. I nodded and sat. The room filled quickly. Voices rose in greeting and laughter. The photographer moved systematically, capturing everything. Servers began bringing out food. Eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, pastries, champagne in crystal flutes. Maris and Oren sat at the head table near the stage, positioned like royalty holding court. Elara and Nolan flanked them. They toasted and laughed and posed for photos. The performance was flawless. I ate slowly. The food tasted like nothing. After about 20 minutes, Elara stood and walked to the microphone on the stage. The room quieted. The photographer positioned herself at the perfect angle. "Thank you all so much for coming today," Elara began, her voice warm and practiced. "This celebration means the world to us. As many of you know, Maris and Oren have been incredible blessings in our lives. They have shown us what true family looks like: generous, supportive, unconditionally loving." People murmured agreement. Someone said, "Hear, hear." So Nolan and I wanted to do something special for them, something to show how much they mean to us. She paused for effect. "We sent them on their dream trip to Greece. 2 weeks of luxury, all expenses covered, because they deserve nothing but the best." Applause erupted. Maris put her hand over her heart in a gesture of overwhelmed gratitude. Oren stood and hugged Elara. The photographer captured it all. I sat in my corner and felt nothing. Elara continued, "Family is not just about blood. It is about who shows up, who invests, who really understands you and wants the best for you. That is what Maris and Oren have done for us, and we are so grateful." More applause. Someone started a standing ovation. I remained seated. Then I stood, not to applaud, to walk. I moved through the tables toward the front of the room. People noticed. Conversations faltered. The applause died down as I approached the stage. Elara saw me coming. Her smile flickered. "Dad, is everything—" I stopped in front of the stage and turned to face the room. My voice was calm and clear. "I need to say something." The room went silent. Elara's eyes widened. "Dad, this is not really the time." "It is exactly the time." I looked at her directly. "You just told everyone that you sent Maris and Oren on their dream trip, that you paid for it, that it was your generous gift." "Yes, because you paid for it with my money." The silence deepened. Someone gasped. Maris's face went pale. Elara's voice turned sharp. Dad, you are confused. Maybe we should talk privately. I am not confused. I pulled the folded papers from my pocket, the transaction summaries Hector had given me. Over the past 3 months, $180,000 was taken from my accounts without my explicit permission. The money was used to book luxury travel, pay for resort stays, purchase first-class flights, and cover concierge services. The primary beneficiaries were your in-laws. Oren stood abruptly. Now wait just a minute. I am not finished. I kept my eyes on Elara. You accessed my accounts using authorization you claimed I gave you years ago. You spent the money in increments designed to avoid immediate detection. When I confronted you about it, you told me I was being paranoid. You told me that Maris and Oren were your real family now, that I was just, what did you call it? A good father, but that chapter is over. Elara's face flushed red. You are taking that out of context. Am I? I unfolded one of the papers and held it up. These are bank records, dates, amounts, merchants, every single charge documented. I also have security logs showing when and how the transactions were authorized. I have preserved ATM camera footage. I have statements from fraud prevention specialists confirming the activity. The room was frozen. Phones came out, not to take photos, but to record, to witness. Maris found her voice, thin and defensive. Graham, if there was some misunderstanding about finances, surely we can resolve this privately. There is no misunderstanding. Your daughter-in-law stole from me to buy you a vacation. I looked at her directly. And you let her. You encouraged her. You told her I was irrelevant, that I did not matter, that only people like you, people with money and status, were real family. Oren's face darkened. This is slander. We had no idea. You had every idea. I turned to address the whole room now. I spent 30 years raising Elara alone. I gave up promotions to be present. I saved every dollar to give her security, and when she decided that was not glamorous enough, she repackaged my sacrifice as inadequacy. She traded me in for people who could offer her image. Elara tried again, her voice breaking. Dad, please. You are embarrassing yourself. No. My voice was like iron. I am protecting myself. I pulled out the USB drive and held it up. This contains every piece of evidence. It also contains documentation that as of last Friday, my will has been rewritten. You are no longer my beneficiary. My estate will go into an educational trust for your son, administered by my attorney. You will have no access, no control, and no ability to contest it. The room erupted. People started talking over each other. Elara stood frozen, her mouth open. Nolan looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Furthermore, I continued, all account access has been revoked. Every card you had linked to my accounts has been canceled. Every saved payment method has been deleted. Every authorization has been removed. You will never touch my finances again. Maris stood now, her voice shaking with rage. You cannot do this. You cannot just... I already did. I looked at her coldly. I filed everything. It is done. Legal. Permanent. Elara finally found words, but they came out as desperate anger. You are a bitter old man. You are doing this because you cannot stand that I have my own life. No, I turned back to her. I am doing this because you told me your in-laws were your real family, so I am giving you exactly what you wanted. You can have them. You can have their approval, their status, their image, but you will not have my money anymore, and you will not have my inheritance. This is insane, Oren shouted. You are not even thinking clearly. This is elder abuse. Actually, a calm voice interrupted from the doorway, he is thinking very clearly. Everyone turned. Tessa Rhine stood at the entrance to the ballroom in a navy suit, holding a briefcase. She walked forward with steady confidence. I am Tessa Rhine, Mr. Voss's attorney. I can confirm that every document mentioned here has been properly executed, witnessed, and filed. Mr. Voss is of completely sound mind, as verified by his physician and documented in video testimony. He has every legal right to restructure his estate as he sees fit. Elara's voice cracked. Dad, please, we can fix this. We can talk. There is nothing to talk about. I looked at her one last time. You made your choice. You said I was not real family, so I am honoring that. You are free. I turned and walked toward the exit. Tessa fell into step beside me. Behind us, the ballroom erupted into chaos, shouting, crying, people trying to make sense of what had just happened. As we reached the foyer, I heard Elara call out one last time, Dad, please! I did not turn around. At the top of the stairs, a hotel staff member approached Elara from the side. I heard her quiet voice. Excuse me, ma'am. Your card was declined for the additional ballroom charges and the photographer. Do you have another form of payment? Elara fumbled for her purse. Her hands shook as she pulled out another card. The staff member ran it. We were almost to the elevator when I heard the result. I am sorry, ma'am. This one was declined as well. I pressed the elevator button. Tessa looked at me. Are you all right? Yes. That took courage. No, I said quietly. It took clarity. The elevator doors opened. We stepped inside. As they closed, I caught one last glimpse of the ballroom foyer. Elara was surrounded by people, some comforting her, others whispering and staring. Maris and Oren stood apart, their faces twisted with shock and rage. Nolan sat on a bench with his head in his hands. The doors shut. Tessa and I rode down in silence. When we reached the lobby, she walked me to the parking lot. What happens now? She asked. Now I go home. I have tea. I go to work tomorrow. I fix things that are broken. And Elara? I looked at the hotel one last time. She will figure out what family really means, or she will not. Either way, it is no longer my problem. I got in my car. Tessa knocked on the window. I rolled it down. You did the right thing, she said. I know. I drove away slowly, following the winding road down the hill. In my rearview mirror, the Grandview Hotel grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. That evening, my phone exploded with messages, text after text, calls I did not answer. The family group chat lit up with arguments and accusations and people demanding explanations. I turned off my phone. I sat at my kitchen